Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us for this week's Thursday with AARP show. I am Amber Miller with AARP Wisconsin and also your host for the show. You had the pleasure for the last 2 weeks having Sam Wilson, our state director, and I want to say a great big thank you to him for doing such an amazing job. So of course, before we get started with our guest, please always remember to check out the AARP Wisconsin website, which will give you information about upcoming events, the COVID vaccine, any information that you could think of that's related to AARP. You could find it all there. Once again, aarp.org/WI. Also remember the Friendly Voice initiative that started last year through AARP under the Community Connections. So if you go to the website below or call the phone number, which will be popping up, you can request one of our friendly AARP trained volunteers to call you. And sometimes you just need to hear that friendly voice on the other end. You could put a request in for yourself or for your loved one, and you can receive a call. It could be daily, weekly, or monthly. And this is free. There is no cost, of course, and you could be any age, and you do not need to be an AARP member. And if you also go to the AARP Community Connections page, you'll find additional information about opportunities in your area where you could put together a volunteer group to help support your neighborhood. So all that information is there, once again, free, and you do not need to be an AARP member. So even though we have been living in a virtual world, we still are looking for volunteers for our AARP Wisconsin family. If you're looking to volunteer, you can find additional information at the website below, which is aarp.org/I-want-2. So I want to volunteer. There'll be a different additional information on volunteer opportunities. And then also you can fill out an online application, and depending on what you're looking for, whether it's, presentations or advocacy, we'll make sure that we get the information and connect with you soon. So we're always looking for amazing volunteers. We cannot do all the work that we do without them. So today's show is, I think, a topic that we've all been thinking about since COVID started March of last year. So our guest today is Teresa Keenan. She is the Director of Consumer Insights, Health, and Health Security with AARP Wisconsin. Hi, Teresa.
Hi, Amber. How are you?
Hi. How are you?
I'm good. It's nice to see you.
Thank you. You too. And I know today we're going to be chatting a little bit about research that came out March of this year, all about healthier habits alleviate pandemic stress. And this is some research that came out, and I know we're going to have a conversation about, I didn't even know maybe AARP did research like this.
That's right.
But now that we've been, we're still in the pandemic, especially with the Delta variants coming out. And I think we've all, had some stress in our life, and what are ways that we can have those healthier habits. We just thought it'd be perfect for you to be on our show today. So thank you again.
Oh, you're quite welcome, Amber. And I'm actually very happy to be here. I'm always happy to talk about research that we do at AARP.
So the article that I'm talking, or the research that I'm talking about, once again, healthier habits alleviate pandemic stress. And why is this topic so relevant now?
Well, I'll give you a little bit of background about the study before we talk about the results. But we actually fielded this study back in October, late October and early November of 2020. And if you think back to where we were then, we were about 6 months into the pandemic. And for those of us, such as myself, who were lucky to work from home, that was about the 33rd week of working from home, 33rd to 35th week of working from home. And it was right before and right after the 2020 election. And there wasn't a vaccine. The COVID-19 vaccine was at that point in time really very hypothetical, still under development. People were very uncertain about whether there was going to be a vaccine. And so in AARP, in the research unit, we wanted to get a sense of how were people coping? Were they coping or not coping? How were they experiencing the pandemic? And, against the backdrop, we knew that the COVID death toll kept rising. By the time we were in October, people were experiencing isolation. They were not able really to spend time with friends and family. A lot of fire pits and things like that in my neighborhood, so people could spend time outside. And there was a lot of sort of day-to-day uncertainty about what was going to be happening. How could you manage your work and family responsibilities? So we fielded the survey in October and November, but we then held on to the results because the results were kind of interesting and encouraging. And so we decided to hold on to them and release them in March. And so the date of the report is March 21st, or 2021, excuse me. And we released the results to coincide with the 1-year anniversary of the World Health Organization's declaration of a pandemic. And so we thought that the time was absolutely appropriate to release the results then.
And I know that we have some of that information coming up, but can you share a little bit of some of the findings and results? And once again, with our viewers, if you have any questions throughout the show, you could please post them below on the facebook.com page or the YouTube page if you have any questions related to this very interesting research. And I do appreciate the fact too that a lot of this was done, like you said, 6 months into the pandemic, and now we're past a year, and just how so much life has changed even just in the last 6 months, especially with the vaccine. So yeah, if you could share some of the findings and results, that would be great.
Yes, absolutely. And so I think we have the report, and there's a lot of really good information in the report, but I'd like to just go over a few of the findings, sort of the high level findings. And so the first thing we found that stress levels were really high across the board, and younger adults were feeling it even more. And in this study, this is a little bit different than some we do at AARP. In this, we focused on adults 18 and older. Sometimes we do surveys where we're just looking at adults 50 and older because that's our membership. But in this case, we decided to tap into 18 plus. And here we see that stress levels were really high, with younger adults feeling it even more. So people were asked, how were they feeling, rating their health on a scale of 1 to 10. So high stress is 8, 9, and 10. So you can see that for our younger adults, which are 18 to 49, and even the next age group up, about a fifth were experiencing high stress, 19%, basically a fifth, one in 5 were experiencing high stress. The following slide, slide 7, looks at some other groups that were also experiencing high stress. And here we saw that women and Hispanics were feeling the highest level of stress. Now, if you look at that slide, you might be saying, well, hold on a minute. It looks like Blacks and Black non-Hispanics are experiencing high stress. Indeed, they are. But what I'm looking at specifically here is the highest level of stress, those respondents who gave an 8, 9, or 10. And here we see again, for women, it's about a fifth, 22%, if my eyes don't deceive me. And for Hispanic respondents, it's 21%. So about a fifth in each of those groups, women and Hispanic respondents over the ages of 18 were experiencing high rates of stress.
And why do you feel, Teresa, since we're on this slide, why do you feel that just women in general, why did they score so high? Why do you feel like women have more stress?
Well, a lot of it, and we'll see on a couple of the other slides, is this sort of trying to balance work and family. And again, we're thinking of, here we're looking at women 18 and older. So the stresses of trying to have school at home. I think of some of my colleagues at AARP. I just can't imagine. I don't have any children, but I just can't imagine my colleagues that had children and were trying to do work, if they were lucky to have a job during the pandemic, to do work and manage childcare, maybe dealing with elderly relatives and being concerned about them, not being able to see them, not being able to visit them. So there was a lot of stress, particularly I think with women trying to balance family caregiving responsibilities.
Absolutely.
What was also interesting we saw, and this is on slide 8, which came as a bit of a surprise to us. And again, we're looking at adults 18 and older, and we saw that younger adults were more likely, and this is 18 to 49-year-olds, were more likely to rate their mental health as fair or poor. And that's on the left-hand side of the slide. 14% of those 18 to 49 rated their mental health as fair or poor. But at the bottom, they rated their overall health, and this is way over on the right-hand side in the navy blue, about a quarter of them rated their overall health as excellent. So we were a little bit puzzled by that at AARP, and we're like, well, what's going on here? So we were actually, I guess I would say, encouraged that we saw some other research that was done by the Kaiser Family Foundation, and they found something very similar, which is they found that although there's been an increase during this time period in the share of adults 65 and older who experienced pandemic-related stress, they're less likely than those 18 to 64 to report those effects. And there was a lot of discussions about why that might be. Maybe older individuals have seen things similar to this in the past, have a little bit more experience with it, maybe obviously past child rearing responsibilities, and so feeling less stress in that case.
And what's interesting too, Teresa, is over the past 18 months or so, since March of last year, we've heard a lot of people saying, isolation, loneliness, and mental health should be on the forefront because of COVID, but that was actually an issue even before COVID. And I actually think COVID brought it to the forefront of, your research is showing 18 to 24, but, everybody had either themselves or they knew somebody that was really struggling and maybe still struggling with mental health issues and isolation. So I appreciate you sharing that. And that actually surprised me too, because I don't know if a lot of people feel like they can freely talk about mental health and where they would go to for help, or if people will, frown upon them of like, oh, just snap out of it. So
that's right. When I think one of the things that we really were surprised about, and this is on slide 9, which was on balance, adults 18 and older were behaving in healthier ways during the pandemic. And so we did something a little bit different in AARP, a little bit different than some of the other researchers out there. And we looked at net change, which is looking at the percentage of people who did more of a particular thing, and then subtracting out the percentage of people who did less, so that we would have sort of a net number. And it's interesting, I think, on this slide, and this is really what we were encouraged by, is that on balance, adults 18 and older are behaving in healthier ways, at least in the time period in which we fielded this survey. They were meditating more. You see that way up at the top on the slide. They were meditating more, and they were exercising or walking more vigorously. Now, I will confess, I'm one of those people I have to put on my calendar to go walk because I'm always so busy. But it's important, right? And so it's interesting to us to see that adults over 18 were behaving in healthier ways. Now, the same slide 9, also shows there's some exceptions to that pattern. So you see a little bit down from exercise, eating comfort foods and sleeping or napping. They may be two of my favorite pastimes, but those aren't necessarily the healthiest ways to deal with stress. So there's sort of the exceptions there, and eating more and sleeping or napping more might be reflective of the amount of time that adults had at home. And if we think back to the early days of the pandemic, even in October or November, people were still spending a great deal of time at home, masking, social distancing, and so on. And so although they were behaving in healthier ways, there were still one or two ways where they were not being healthy. Now, the last slide I wanted to look at is slide 11, which is some gender differences. And you alluded to that earlier, Amber, about why we might be seeing some differences between men and women. And this is very interesting. So men and women 18 and over were engaging in sort of a similar combination of healthy and unhealthy habits. But women, unfortunately, were engaging in more unhealthy habits. So eating more comfort foods, sleeping or napping more to pass the time, overreacting or losing control, and taking herbal supplements. We decided that's kind of a negative, at least in terms of dealing with stress. So engaging in these activities more among women may in fact be reflective of their efforts to try to stave off the higher levels of stress that they were experiencing.
And Teresa, we have a question from Arlene that we're going to pull up, which I think kind of goes hand in hand with what we were talking about. So did AARP take into consideration how working from home affected people?
We did, and I will say we didn't do that in this survey, but we have a lot of other research that AARP has done about the pandemic. Actually, we had started tracking how people in our membership group, in our membership age, 50 plus, were reacting to the pandemic. And we did 5 waves of a survey looking at various aspects of their lives. So there's a module that looks at health and how they might have changed their health behaviors in the early stages of the pandemic. Lots about finance and whether people were working from home, whether they were considered essential workers. There's some questions about how often they were able to visit family and friends. Did they visit family and friends externally, social distancing? How often and to what extent did they mirror those sorts of preventative behaviors, masking, and so on? So there's an awful lot of research on aarp.org/research. And if you type in coronavirus or pandemic, a lot of that work will come up. So there's actually a whole other group within AARP research that does work on finance and work and jobs. And they have been continuing to take the temperature of how the pandemic has been affecting workers.
And Teresa, I know we were talking before the show about the research part of AARP. In general, the AARP website, it has so much great information. The research part, I don't know if a lot of people knew that there was research readily available for them. That's why I thought it was so great to have you on today's show. With the research that we're talking about right now, what are the top 3 or 4 takeaways that people can take from this actual research?
Well, it's interesting because I think when we fielded this, and again, maybe we were projecting some of our own feelings, I think we were not expecting to see the level of resilience that we saw in some of these results. And the takeaways for me are things like be kind to yourself. And I used to travel quite a bit for work, and they always said, you're on an airplane, so put your mask on first before you help others. It's the same sort of thing here now, right? So we're faced with an unprecedented pandemic. The best thing you can do for yourself and your family is to be kind to yourself. And they talk about times of turbulence. I think this is really a time of turbulence. So be kind to yourself, recognize that balancing work and family or whatever challenges you have are not easy. And like the people in our survey did, try to increase the number of positive health habits and try to decrease the negatives. So, make a little note on your calendar to get out and walk more, try to have healthier foods, cut down on your snack foods. Try to reduce stress, whether it's through yoga or meditation or exercise. Make those connections. While we can make connections, seek connection and comfort with people you haven't seen in a long time. And I think those are really the top takeaways. Resilience and how to build and manage resilience yourself.
And what I like about those is not saying people have to do all of them. You can
No.
pick one at a time, and especially in Wisconsin, of course, we have seasonal weather. So we know usually from sometimes even October to May, it's snowing. So it's hard for us to walk. But even for me, and I love that you also put that, Teresa, it's like the self-care part is so important. And I know, especially if you're a caregiver, self-care makes you feel guilty about it and you're not putting your family first, but you do, as you stated, because somebody also told me that many years ago, you have to put your mask on first. And granted, it could be a COVID mask, but we're thinking about like the oxygen mask. If you're in an airplane, you have to put your mask on first to ensure that you're taken care of so you could take care of other people. And it really is those small changes or small ways that you can adapt it to your lifestyle, whether it's maybe eating more fruits and vegetables or taking a walk, just really just moving. I could tell you, for me, the moving piece, I think, has helped me out tremendously. It's been difficult to, maybe not see your friends as much and you can't travel and your whole life has changed, but there definitely are little things that you can do that really add up.
Yeah, and I would also say, and this is probably a note to myself, not to beat yourself up if you have too much, you're having a little bit too much chocolate or, a few too many snacks. You can get out and walk again tomorrow.
Yes, I have been on that chocolate cookie diet for many months now, Teresa. So, but I agree, don't beat yourself up. And I saw as part of the survey that a lot of it was like comfort food.
Yes.
And I agree, there's just something about the fall season where you want that comfort food. And, and to me, it's just, you got to do what you have to do, but also there's kind of ways to ensure that you're still, getting out and talking to people and working on the mental health. So if people are looking for this report, I think, if I'm not mistaken, our producer Darren is going to pop up. So I actually made a bit.ly. So if you type in this website, the URL into Google or what have you, it will come up with what Teresa is talking about. So if you're like, I kind of want to read the whole report, or maybe it's, something that you could talk to your family and friends about, all that information could be found at bit.ly, so bit.ly/July 29 AARP Wisconsin. We'll make sure that we put that in the notes also. So Teresa, any final words for our guests today?
I would say be sure to check out aarp.org there it is on the bottom of your screen, aarp.org/research. There is a lot of information there. AARP Research does research on a wide variety of topics at the national and at the state level. So there's a lot of work. I can't remember the last study we did on for Wisconsin, but we do a lot of work at the state level on all of our issue areas. So please check it out. And I would say, if anybody wants to send me a quick note, has any questions about the study, I'm happy to answer them.
Great. And we'll make sure, if you have any questions for Teresa, just contact the AARP Wisconsin office and we'll make sure to connect you with Teresa. Teresa, thank you so much. It's really been a pleasure talking with you, and I appreciate everything that you do for AARP and all the great information that's coming out that, once again, that people might not have even known about.
That's right.
So I want to thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, I was very happy to do it, Amber, and I'm always happy to help out AARP Wisconsin.
Great. Thank you so much, Teresa. And then also, if you're looking for upcoming events, we have a plethora of some really great ones coming up virtually. August 6th, Movies for Grownups, It's Not a Burden. August 10th, AARP, A Conversation with Jake Tapper, which I didn't know we were having that. That's pretty interesting. I love it. Wednesday, August 11th, the One-Day University Lecture Series. So the literacy genius of Toni Morrison. Now, if you remember, the One-Day University Lecture Series is a couple times a month, so just please make sure there's so much great information. And then Thursday, August 12th, hosted by our friends at the Fox Valley Technical College here in Wisconsin. If you're looking to maybe start your own business, or if you have a hobby that you're like, well, this could be a business, please make sure to look into the Work for Yourself at 50 Plus. You can find all of that information at the website below, or dial 1-877-926-8300. For August, the Small Dollar Big Impact Grant application is due August 18th. Once again, these are small loans for like organizations or municipalities, other organizations. If you have a really fun, creative idea that you want to get off the ground, you can apply for up to $1,000 grant. We will be doing this until the end of this year. So for more information, go to aarp.org/WI and then SDBI, which stands for Small Dollar Big Impact. And then for next week's show, July 29th, you can come back here to facebook.com or our YouTube page. We're going to be talking about farmers markets and livable communities. I assume probably wherever you live in the state of Wisconsin, you either have visited or live close to a farmers market, but how much great impact that they bring to our community. So we're going to be talking more about that. So I want to thank you guys so much for being here today. It's great to be back. But until then, please make sure to visit the AARP Wisconsin website, and I will see you next week. And until then, take care.